a crucial obstacle to its plan remains Belgium. Belgium and its leader has taken a stance against the European Union time and again and has favored, moved in the direction of its national needs before of that of the European Union's. How is the European Union's proposal going to be formalized without Belgium joining them?
Well, if Belgium does not join, then the initiative will likely collapse. There have been some exotic solutions proposed as a backup, namely that the assets, Russian frozen assets that are presently held in the Belgian jurisdiction via Euroclear could be transferred to another EU country which is willing to play along and to take risks that Belgium refuses to take. That is a possibility, but it's very exotic and very time-consuming to realize. Negotiations are still going on. If the United States, Russia, and Ukraine approach a solution in the coming days, then what the European Commission is proposing will be irrelevant.
All right. Thank you for your perspective there, Mr. Doctorow. And we would now move on, viewers. U.S. President Donald Trump says that he has voided all pardons and commutations signed by President Joe Biden using an auto pen, calling them null and void. Trump posted on Truth Social that any legal documents signed by the mechanical device are terminated and have no legal effect. However, legal experts say Trump's declaration is not enforceable as the Constitution provides no mechanism to overturn presidential pardons once issued. Biden also used the auto pen for thousands of acts of clemency during his term, including commutations and class pardons for military and marijuana offenses, a practice which is also used historically by other presidents. Trump has previously criticized auto pen signed pardons for certain legislators investigating the January 6 Capitol attack, but fact checkers confirm these pardons remain legally valid. All right, now joining us in this discussion is retired Major General Sudhakarji. He's a senior geopolitical and strategic defense expert. Thank you, Sudhakarji, for joining us here on NewsX World. For our viewers, could you explain the use of auto pen for pardons and if Trump has the authority to proclaim those issued by Biden as void?
Kriti, good afternoon. Thank you for getting me for your show. If Donald Trump wishes to exercise his mental faculties and decision making with one stroke of pen, well, nobody on this planet will ever have a chance to comment on it. Because it is not only him or by Joe Biden, there are many presidents prior who have used the same auto pen and they have issued executive orders. They have also nullified certain practices with the signature of auto pen. Because of lack of time, one cannot do research in such a short time. But I am confident as a student of geopolitics, I have read many historical precedents that the American history of past 200 years and more, they have always used the auto pen. Now to single out Joe Biden and undo whatever directions he has given, I think it is uncalled for. If the democracy of USA is prepared to accept such kind of things, I don't think it will stand the scrutiny, legal scrutiny, in the eyes of the law. In my opinion, this particular move by Donald Trump is highly incorrect and infructuous. It will lead to lots of complications within the democracy and bring in lots of avoidable infighting between the political stakeholders, be it the Republicans and Democrats. It will make a vitiated atmosphere. As it is, USA is having too many fronts which are opened up. I think it's about time that Donald Trump takes a serious consideration of all these decisions and cools down, calms down, and consults its advisors before he actually puts the decisions into effect. Back to you, Kriti.
Yeah, on a lighter note, I want to discuss this with you. Trump has repeatedly claimed that Biden, because of his age and health-related concerns, relied excessively on tools like AutoPen. Now, I was reading a CNN article that in fact went on to say how Trump used to mock on Biden's health. He himself appears to have been caught dozing off in his last cabinet meeting.
You said it. Kriti, I must compliment you. Looks like your articulations, they reflect very deep insight into the subject, as if you have been actually handling it for quite some time. I'm glad that it is coming from a platform like NewsX World. You see, the fact of the matter is, when you point a finger at others, there are three fingers pointing at you. Has he had time to introspect himself? Does he know what decisions he is taking? Does he know how he has compounded the geopolitical churn in the world order? Has he been able to fulfill or achieve anything that he promised in his election campaign till date? He's only added, compounded the complexity. It is so difficult to navigate. Why did Elon Musk? Elon Musk is one of the brightest and brilliant guys who joined voluntarily without salary, without pay, to bring down the extraneous expenditure, avoidable expenditure of the state, so that the debt could be reduced. Why has the DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, closed down? Rather, it is unheard of now. Yeah, they started with a very noble mindset. Why did he leave in between? Because Donald Trump doesn't know what decisions he's taking. I don't know. Is he listening to the advisors? And I don't think, do you know that in the history of American governance, this is perhaps for the first time a president is not having the intelligence briefing. Do you know that Tulsi Gabbard is not getting a chance to brief the president? Nobody knows. They are supposed to be on daily basis. A briefing is supposed to be carried out. I'm sorry to say, as a student again, I do not want a superpower to be the way it is being run today. The briefing is carried out by the vice president. Okay, so J.D. Vance, they go for breakfast, and that is the time he carries out some briefing, and he's the person who's taking hands down or the first-hand kind of update from the different advisors. That's not the way the biggest democracy in the world is supposed to function. It's a superpower. It is a global power. It is supposed to roll out a kind of, give out a roadmap of something to be emulated by one and all. This is not on. He is actually shortening the life of America as a superpower. I actually doubt whether they will be able to sustain another couple of years and enjoy the supremacy and authority of America as a global power. I'm afraid China is going to overtake very soon, or a new polycentric world is going to overtake America in some form or the other. Back to you, Kriti.
Thank you for your comment there, Major General Sudhakarji, but I requested to stay on. There's some more news coming in. Now, viewers, at a U.S. cabinet meeting, U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has warned that the United States has only just begun striking alleged drug boats in the Caribbean. Hegseth has also stated that he did not personally witness any survivors of an initial U.S. strike on an alleged drug boat after their reported killing in a follow-up attack sparked accusations of a war crime. Listen in to what he said.
As I've said, and I'll say again, we've only just begun striking narco boats and putting narco terrorists at the bottom of the ocean because they've been poisoning the American people. And Joe Biden tried to approach it with kid gloves and allowed them to come across the border. Cartels take over community, 20 million people, hundreds of thousands of Americans poisoned. And President Trump said, no, we're taking the gloves off. We're taking the fight to these designated terror organizations, and it's exactly what we're doing. So we're stopping the drugs, we're striking the boats, we're defeating.
Meanwhile, Pope Leo has said that the Vatican is looking for ways to calm the situation to avoid suffering in Venezuela. Pope has urged the U.S. President Donald Trump to try to not oust a Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro using military force, urging a resolution through dialogue between the two nations. Listen in.
Las voces que vienen de Estados Unidos cambian con cierta frecuencia a veces. Hay que ver. Por un lado, parece que ha habido una conversación por teléfono de los dos presidentes. Al otro lado hay ese peligro, esa posibilidad de que haya alguna actividad, alguna operación, incluso invadiendo el territorio de Venezuela. Yo no sé más, yo de nuevo creo que es, digamos, mejor buscar maneras de diálogo, quizás presión, incluso presión económica, pero buscando otra manera para cambiar, si es lo que deciden hacer.
And then I request Retired Major General Sudhakarji to join us back into the discussion here. Sir, Trump had earlier said that he would look into a second tap strike on the drug boat there, and now a contrary statement coming from Pete Hegseth that strikes have only just begun. Is there any likelihood that Trump is going to walk the talk as far as his comment on looking into the second tap strike is concerned, or should we expect the U.S. to continue advancing its military deployment in the Caribbean?
Yeah, Kriti, this should become a major concern for the world order. In my opinion, it will do good to Donald Trump to rethink this particular option of going ahead with change of regime. And because it is going to fall flat. I only hope and pray that the American leadership is learning something or making an effort to learn something from the history. What happened in Afghanistan? They had to make a deal with the non-state actor, the Taliban, and had a hasty withdrawal. And this was such a kind of unethical, uncalled for, the superpower switching off the light at middle of the night and, abandoning the structure which they were holding for preceding 20 years. Has anybody heard about a thing like this? What happened in Iraq? Saddam Hussein. What happened? They left behind chaos. And they brought back, what did they bring back to the country? The body bags. So I only urge the leadership of USA to kindly think it over. Are they doing the right thing? Did you listen to the articulations by Pete Hegseth? Just now you played it out. He started discourse by using an adjective, alleged violation, alleged terrorist, alleged drug cartels. If it is alleged, then how the hell is there any evidence to prove the fact that they are actually drug cartels or drug handlers or peddlers? Without any evidence, if you start talking of, there are 83 people, I am told, as per some friend has sent me a message, more than 83 people have been killed.
Right.
And it is only up to the wisdom of the USA to decide whether they are actually terrorists or drug peddlers or whatever. You cannot carry out such kind of activities in Caribbean. These are international waters at your will and at whims and fancies of USA. Simply, you think they are terrorists, it is highly incorrect. Why nobody is raising this question in the United Nations Security Council? I believe the session is on. Why nobody has raised the point in USGA? Is the superpower which is good at in 21st century pulling back from old treaties and the deals like climate change or threats of the common dangers to the world order, and also pulling back from issues which are related to the public safety of the global order, let's say terrorism. If he has to decide what a terrorist is and simply to divert attention of the failure in Middle East and Russia, Ukraine, well, I'm afraid we are stepping into such kind of realm which has got no comeback. USA once again will have to bear the brunt of a failure, of a defeat, because same Maduro has got the capability to whip up the patriotism and the nationalism in the people of Venezuela. They have fled the country towards Chile, towards Peru and other places, and I'm afraid it may lead to a kind of a non-achievement of any kind of targets or the objective which Trump is looking at. He is looking at the regime change. Basically, his eyes are on the oil fields. And I'm afraid the Russians are not going to let go the oil fields, nor the Chinese are going to let go. China has started coming in. I can hear see the comments which are coming in on the open domain that they have started threatening USA. Please mind your activities. And this is not on, this is not acceptable. And this is a very dangerous move which USA is taking. And it may turn out that the same Venezuelans, they will infiltrate into the American ecosystem to homeland security and become a big potential threat. Instead of ISIS threatening the existence of Al-Qaeda, you will create a new form of insurgency which will threaten the public safety and security of the people of USA. Therefore, I would urge the leadership once again to think it over. Are they doing the right thing? Because diplomacy and dialogue in such issues is going to provide a long-lasting solution than any kind of kinetic exercises which they are undertaking.
All right, thanks for your comment there, sir, and I'd let you go with that. Viewers, let's move on now. Tension remain high in Taiwan Strait as China continues to assert its claims over the strategic waterway. A senior Taiwan security official confirmed that China sometimes stimulates and simulates attacks on foreign naval vessels operating in the strait, a major trade route used by about half of global container ships. Taiwan, which operates independently but is claimed by Beijing, shares intelligence with international partners whenever foreign navies transit these waters. This year, 8 countries and navies, including the United States, Britain, France, and New Zealand, have conducted a total of 12 trips through the strait. Taiwan's National Security Bureau Director Tsai Ming-yen said that China typically shadows these ships with its naval forces and occasionally mobilizes air units to simulate attacks, demonstrating its military presence and authority. Taiwan maintains a sophisticated radar and surveillance network to monitor the strait, while Beijing routinely condemns such sailings as provocations. The situation underscores the ongoing strategic tension between China, Taiwan, and global powers navigating the international waterway. And moving on, viewers, an Afghan man who's accused of shooting 2 members of National Guard near the White House and killing one has pleaded not guilty to the murder charges. Rahmanullah Lankonwal is charged with first-degree murder for the death of Sarah Beckstrom, a National Guard member from West Virginia, as well as assault with intent to kill and firearms offenses. Andrew Wolf, another National Guardsman from West Virginia, was wounded in the November 26 attack and is in critical condition. Meanwhile, Judge Renee Raymond has ordered that Lankonwal will be detained until the next hearing of the case, which is on January 14 next year. That's all the time we have for. Do keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.
What we can do as the Interparliamentary Union to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights, to ensure that humanitarian law is respected.
UN Security Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform, and India deserves a position there, a role there.
Prime Minister Modi during Operation Sindoor made it amply clear that war has never been India's choice. We are with the side of peace. We are neither neutral nor indifferent. We are with peace.
We would have dealt with the US a whole lot on trade and those kinds of things, and that's not as certain these days. So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
An opportunity to exchange, to have a dialogue, to have a debate on a different perspective on finding the solution of the conflict.
First thing that is important to have a common ground, and that we do have with humanitarian laws and human rights, but also to say, okay, what does it mean for us as a country to act on these laws and how can we work together?
When we realize that there's something wrong with democracy, the institutions and policies, values come together and we take stock, and it's possible then to improve and chart a new course for democracy.
It's the people's right to self-determination, and if they want to be independent, they should be independent. We will not start a war against Greenland.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. US-Russia find no compromise on key territory issue after Ukraine talks. Kremlin says Ukraine talks with US useful, but a lot of work ahead. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky urged continued pressure on Russia, calling the territorial issue the most difficult. He adds that he hopes to meet US President soon. Russian President Vladimir Putin says Russia does not seek war with European powers, but is ready to fight if Europe pursues a direct conflict. He also accuses Europe of blocking US President Donald Trump's Ukraine peace efforts. French President Emmanuel Macron gears up to visit Beijing today. He is expected to put pressure on his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping to help secure a ceasefire in Ukraine and discuss trade relations. US President Donald Trump signs into law a measure forcing the US State Department to review guidelines for the country's engagement with Taiwan amid escalating concerns that China could move against the self-governing island. And Trump says he held a very productive call with Brazil's President Lula discussing trade, sanctions and joint efforts against organized crime as both leaders seek to deepen economic cooperation and strategic ties. The Trump administration has altered the immigration applications from nationals of 19 countries already facing US travel restrictions, with USCIS saying processing delays are necessary to protect national security. UN Ambassador Danny Danon will join US counterpart Mike Waltz on a visit to Israel from December 8 to 10. The trip continues a Trump administration's engagement following the October Gaza ceasefire. And viewers, let's start the bulletin with some crucial developments coming in regards to the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that Russia does not want a war with European powers, but is ready to fight if Europe did not want a direct conflict with Moscow. Putin has also accused European powers of hindering US President Donald Trump's attempts to end the war in Ukraine by putting forward proposals they know are unacceptable to Moscow. Let's listen in first to what Putin said.
Только вопрос в чем? Если Европа вдруг начнет с нами войну, мне кажется, что очень быстро, это же не Украина. С Украиной мы там действуем хирургическим способом, аккуратненько. Так? Чтобы, понятно, да? Это не война в прямом, современном смысле этого слова. Если Европа вдруг захочет начать с нами войну и начнет ее, то очень может быстро произойти ситуация, при которой нам не с кем будет договариваться.
Meanwhile, Putin has claimed that the eastern Ukrainian railway hub of Kupiansk has been under Moscow's control for weeks. He's added that Russia would shortly also capture Kupiansk Vizlovy, a Ukrainian settlement in the south of Kupiansk. Now, Putin has also threatened to sever Ukraine's access to the sea in response to drone attacks on tankers of Russia's shadow fleet in the Black Sea. Listen in.
Там еще один населенный пункт, который называется Купянск-Узловая. Вот там, по-моему, 2000 зданий. Там идут боевые действия. 600 зданий, где-то около 1000 уже, 600-650 в руках российской армии. Идет продвижение. Я думаю, что через несколько дней мы заберем и этот тоже населенный пункт. Но это отдельный населенный.
And now request Irina Sukuman, senior journalist, joining us live from New York. Thank you, Irina, for joining us here at NewsX World. Now, one of the key sticking points, of course, is the use of Russian frozen assets as far as European Union is concerned. What do you think are some of the others on which Putin has now in fact gone on to warn Europe of a war with it?
He seems to be using nothing but threats as his leverage. At this point, the issue of the frozen assets should not be a matter of controversy. This is not an early stage of the war where it's not clear which of the oligarchs were involved in financing and which weren't. It's very clearly that everyone who is backing the Putin regime is backing the war. It's one and the same. And there should be no question about the fact that Russian state assets and Russian private assets by assorted oligarchs and companies and supposedly private entities are all benefiting the war effort and all are in violation of international norms. Just like everything that Putin is doing, not only in Ukraine, but in provocative and aggressive actions inside other European countries is also in violation of international laws, in some cases quite aggressively so. The internet cable cutting under the waters, for instance, is yet another example of completely illegal behavior that is contributing to destabilization. And of course, illicit trade, money laundering, all sorts of illicit activities, all of these are more than sufficient to justify releasing these resources towards collective security.
Irina, now Putin has also threatened to sever Ukraine's access to sea in response to the drone attacks on tankers of Russia's shadow fleet in the Black Sea. How do you view that?
I think the opposite is much more likely, given the fact that the Russian Black Sea fleet is practically non-existent. Most of it has been successfully tanked and drowned by the Ukrainians, and the rest has had to retreat far, far away from that vicinity. So I think these threats are empty, and to the extent that that Russia is continuing making these threats, this is as good as time as any for Europe and other allies to assist Ukraine with severing Russia's bridges connecting Crimea and the rest of the Ukrainian territories, and make it impossible for Russia to carry out its threats and to pursue any sort of concerted activity in that area. In other words, the tables need to be turned. Russia should be in no position to make any threats to anybody.
All right. Well, thank you, Irina, for joining us and giving your comment there. With that, viewers, we are now going to move on. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has addressed the Irish Parliament, thanking the country for its steadfast support. Zelensky has called for pressure to stay on Russia during his speech at the Irish Parliament. Listen in.
Ireland has stood firmly and clearly for our independence and for a just end to this war. So thank you for your steadfast support for these years of standing with us. And thank you for not losing faith in us. All the pressure on Russia must remain in place so that Russia does not believe it will be rewarded for this war with stolen Ukrainian land or kidnapped Ukrainian children.
And Zelensky has also said that Ukrainian territory issue is the most difficult issue. He's added that it is Russia's goal that the US withdraws from any engagement with Ukraine. Meanwhile, he has also stated that he hopes to meet with US representatives as soon as possible after Russian President Putin's meeting with US envoy Steve Witkoff in Moscow. Meanwhile, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha has said in a post on X that Putin has consistently made statements that demonstrate that he does not intend to end the war. He's added that it is time now to force Russia to end the war in Ukraine. All right, I would now request Irina Sukuman, senior journalist, to join us back in the discussion here. Irina, now Zelensky's remarks, how do you view them, given that many have been saying that the peace plan is rather tilted towards Russia? But here Zelensky is saying that Russia wants the US out of the peace talks.
Look, the entire so-called peace plan is actually a surrender plan that was masterminded by Russia and sold as an influence operation. The fact that Witkoff keeps falling for these plans, and he has advised Russia on how to circumvent U.S. resistance to this, is just another example why he is not qualified to lead these talks at all. Unfortunately, Russia it has actually very few cards left, and it keeps replaying them. The only thing in its favor is that the US administration, which appears to have very few to no Russian experts, keeps falling for the same tricks the entire time. Had it not been this case, this conversation would have been entirely different from the very beginning. The pressure would have been on Russia to make very significant concessions and then eventually to withdraw, not on Ukraine, which has been defending not only itself, but also serving as an effective buffer against continued Russian aggression well into Europe. We are seeing the replay of these outdated Russian propaganda ploys because Russia needs to divert attention from its own military and economic losses, and it's suffering very heavy losses, and its progress is, no matter what Putin may claim, is actually quite incremental. It's incredibly slow, especially given the disparity in size and alleged military might between Russia and Ukraine. That only underscores the extremely slow progress Russia is making, and the losses it has suffered in actually losing some of the territories it claimed early in the war. So actually time is on Ukraine's side, time is on the side of the allies, and US has every means at its disposal to force Russia into very serious concessions.
All right. Well, I thank you for joining us, Irina, on NewsX World and giving us your perspective. And with that, viewers, we will now move on to some more developments on the peace deal that's under works. US President Donald Trump and Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva held a phone call on Tuesday discussing trade, the economy, and organized crime. Trump told reporters that the conversation also touched on sanctions, referencing measures his administration imposed over Brazil's prosecution of former President Jair Bolsonaro. Now, in a social media post, Trump said that he looks forward to further talks with Lula and expects the partnership to yield positive results. Brazil's presidential palace thanked Trump for removing additional tariffs on U.S. imports of Brazilian products, including coffee, beef, cacao, and fruits. During the 40-minute call, Lula emphasized the need to strengthen U.S.-Brazil cooperation to fight international organized crime. The talks come amid a heightened U.S. activity in the region, including military deployments in the Caribbean and the ongoing strikes against suspected drug boats off of Venezuela's coast. Let's take a look.
Sir, you had a call with Brazil's President Lula today. Can you tell us what you discussed?
Yeah, we had a great talk. We talked about trade. We talked about sanctions, because, as you know, I sanctioned them, having to do with certain things that took place. But we had a very good talk. I like him. Very good. We had some good meetings, as you know, but we had a very good talk today. Yes, I did.
Viewers, Trump there in his statement says talks were rather productive between him and Lula da Silva, and in fact suggesting relations between the two countries are finally improving. Reducing trade barriers and tackling organized crime were among the topics they discussed, and both of them agreed they would speak again soon. In fact, a statement also came in from the Brazilian president, who said, "I stress the urgency of strengthening cooperation with the US to combat international organized crime." President Trump stressed his full willingness to work with Brazil, and he will give full support to joint initiatives between the two countries to confront these criminal organizations. Trump, meanwhile, signaled that their conversation built upon a dialogue they had started in September on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York City. In fact, Trump also went on his Truth Social platform to say that President Lula and I established a relationship at a meeting which took place at the UN, and I believe it set the stage for very good dialogue and agreement long into the future. And now I'd like to welcome Matthew Wadham, American journalist and author from Washington. Thank you, Matthew, for joining us this morning in India from NewsX World. Matthew, should we finally believe that relations between US and Brazil may be improving after months of economic and political tension?
Well, clearly they are improving, but what is driving the improvement is not entirely clear. I suspect it's because President Trump is tired of Americans complaining about inflation, and so that's why he's reduced or taken off the tariffs on Brazilian exports, a lot of which come into the country, such as coffee and beef. So I don't think that Brazil has done anything in terms of his friend and ally, former President Jair Bolsonaro, who's in prison on what appear to be trumped up charges. They haven't done anything to alleviate that situation. So I'm left to speculate, I'm left to conclude that this is purely motivated by domestic U.S. politics, presumably a desire to lower consumer prices on popular Brazilian imports to the U.S., such as coffee and beef. So that would be that. Without knowing for sure, that would be my guess.
All right, and there's also the larger question of tension over Bolsonaro. What can we expect from Brazil in this regard?
What can we expect from Brazil? Probably nothing, because they have a Supreme Court that is basically a very powerful branch of government that doesn't operate like a court at all. It operates like a prosecution service, and it gets away with things that Supreme Courts in other countries like the United States and Canada would never get away with. And I suspect Brazil is not going to do anything because President Lula da Silva views Jair Bolsonaro as a mortal enemy, and I think they want to keep him behind bars. I don't know if he's going to be, what's his sentence, 27 years or something outrageous like that. He may not serve that full term. He's not a young man. He may not even live that many years. But I think at least for the time being, Lula's administration in Brazil views Bolsonaro as a threat, so they're not going to do anything to accommodate him or placate his followers.
And what about the Venezuela question? How should we see Brazil posturing its foreign policy when Trump is almost at the verge of what some would see as an invasion?
You're talking about narco traffickers from South America that are coming from Venezuela and Colombia, and to a lesser extent from Brazil. I'm not sure if Brazilian narcotics are a major factor in the illegal drug market in the United States, but they may have. I think mostly they go to Europe, but that doesn't mean that the U.S. approves of the activity. And on the call that Lula and Trump had, apparently they discussed Brazil, the fact that Brazil is going to crack down on organized crime more strongly than it has in the past. And I think that would please the United States government, because Donald Trump is not is not enthusiastic about narco trafficking, and look what he's especially if there's a possibility of the drugs reaching the United States. Look at him having the U.S. military blow up alleged Venezuelan narco trafficking vessels in the Caribbean Sea, and now dozens of alleged drug smugglers have been killed. And that just shows, whether you agree with the policy or not, it just shows that the Trump administration is quite committed to combating illegal drug trafficking. So anything that is going to move the ball forward in terms of cracking down on illegal drug trafficking is probably going to be favored by the Trump administration.
All right, do stay on with us, Matthew, as we move on to some more developments now coming in. The Trump administration, viewers, has halted immigration applications from nationals of 19 countries that already face U.S. travel restrictions, according to a policy memo from USCIS. Now, the agency said the pause may delay some green card and citizenship applications, but is necessary to ensure applicants are fully vetted for national security reasons. The measure primarily affects African and Asian countries previously identified as high risk, including those fully or partially restricted under Trump's 2024 travel bans. USCIS